Hello everyone, and welcome to my Mists of Pandaria warrior leveling guide. In this guide I'll show my talent tree, compare the different specializations at different levels, and also what glyphs I'll be using. When you reach level 10, you can choose between arms, fury, and protection. Protection are amazing for open world questing, but also for dungeon farming, as you'll pretty much have instant queues. However, arms are also performing fairly decent, and why I like to level as the specialization is because at the end game you will mainly be playing as arms in the beginning until the end of this expansion, at least if you wish to play as DPS warrior. What I also like about arms and when you're leveling is that you'll pretty much be one or two shotting most enemies at low level, and it will stay like this for a long time. When you get to Mists of Pandaria, it's also gonna be the fastest way to level up, and you'll also be killing enemies super quickly. If we compare Fury to arms at low level, well then Fury are not really performing that great. It's doing way less damage, and when you're using two one-hands or two hands, there's also a higher chance of missing your attacks. How about protection? Well, just like arms, then I'm also pretty much one-shotting enemies, but if you pay attention to my gear, I'm using starter gear and no heirlooms. So if you don't have access to heirlooms, I would definitely level as protection in the beginning, also because you'll have instant queues for dungeons, so you can combine dungeon farming with questing. Leveling like this is also amazing if you plan to tank at max level, so you're used to your different abilities. How about as we level up? Does Fury get better? Well, not really in my opinion. You're not doing a high amount of single target, and if you pull 2 or 3 enemies at the same time, you're not really killing them that fast. At least not if we compare to, for example, arms, where if your Mortal Strike crits, you're pretty much still one-shotting the enemies like you did at level 1. At this level range, it also seems like protection are doing better than arms, mainly because you can always pull 2 or 3 enemies and benefit from your revenge that hits multiple targets, and it's also doing an insane amount of damage. So the benefit here is that you can kill 2 or 3 at the same time, as arms are probably killing 1 or 2 enemies. No matter what specialization you choose, then the quickest way to level 90 is always going to be with quest. Therefore, I'm always following this amazing leveling guide, and the guide I will also leave in the description below this video, where there will be a redirect link to where you can download and test it out. How about my talent tree? Well, these are the talents I usually choose as I'm leveling up. But instead of just showing this, I'll also explain each talent and why I choose the following things as I do. The benefit of choosing Juggernaut and why I always do this is because I will be able to pretty much always have my charge ready for the next enemy. Where double time, yeah, you can charge 2 enemies in a row, but then at some point the recharge time is also going to be fairly slow, and then you will end up without a new charge for the next enemy. And Warbringer are mainly just for PvP. At level 30, I never choose Impending Victory because it will replace my Victory Rush, which is already built into my rotation and keeping me high on health. And Second Wind would force you to drop low before you would start benefiting from this heal. This is why I always choose Enraged Regeneration, as I can use this to heal myself and still have my Victory Rush to constantly get a bit of healing when I'm killing enemies. Staggering Shout are mainly for PvP, where Piercing Howl is amazing for kiting, but then again you don't want to kite the enemies, you would like to kill them quickly. Therefore I usually go with Disrupting Shout, because sometimes you might be fighting more than one caster and then you won't really benefit much from your pommel. This is where having an AoE pommel, or well, an AoE silence or interrupt effect is going to be amazing. Dragon Roar does a high amount of damage, but the negative thing is that it has a 1-minute cooldown and only knocks down the targets for half a second. Where Shockwave might do less damage, but it has a 40 seconds cooldown, and if you hit 3 enemies, which you probably usually does, then it's reduced to 20 seconds, and it will also stun these enemies for 4 seconds, where you won't be taking any damage. A No Blade Storm does a high amount of damage, but it does nothing else, and this is why I'm always choosing Shockwave. How about level 75? In my opinion, for players leveling on their own, there's only one option, and this is Mass Spell Reflection, as you will benefit from the ability, where the 2 other talents only benefits you if you're leveling with someone else or dungeon farming. How about my different glyphs? At low level I like to choose Bull Rush for having more rage whenever I use my charge. Later on, I'd also like to swap it into enraged speed, so I'm moving faster whenever I'm enraged. A must-have is going to be improving my victory rush, as the healing done is now absolutely insane. We can only choose this because we didn't choose the talent Impending Victory. And another must-have is going to be this that increases the damage and cooldown of my thunderclap. The reason for this is because as arms and protection we have a passive that applies deep wounds at damage over time bleed whenever we use thunderclap. Good when you're for example pulling many targets. What about minor glyphs? Here I go for Intimidating Shout, so the enemies are not running around and pulling more. And I also like bloody healing, so my bandages is 20% better whenever deep wounds is active. The third option is really up to you, as most of these are just visual effects. Next up, I'll compare the different specializations at level 85, so when you start leveling in Mists of Pandaria content. Here we have the Arms Warrior, and I constantly have something to press. I'm still doing a high amount of damage, and I'm always staying high on health due to my victory rush. This is a great spec, especially if we're just killing one enemy at a time. But what if you would like to kill multiple at the same time? Just activate your sweeping strikes and start cleaving all the enemies, and make sure to apply your bleed with Thunderclap. Why I like arms so much is because in Mists of Pandaria content it's going to be easy to stack many enemies at the same time, so when you are playing a specialization that also has a ton of cleave damage, you will be leveling insanely fast. And this is why arms are usually my most favorite spec when I move into Mists of Pandaria content. Just remember to have some cooldowns ready if you are doing these big pulls. The benefit of leveling arms is that if you also plan to DPS at max level, then in phase 1 and 2, arms is definitely going to outcompete the Fury. Is this the same case when we compare Fury and arms leveling? Well, arms are doing good, but Fury are definitely not doing bad either when it comes to single target damage. However, when we compare these two specializations and the possibility to be cleaving or well, killing multiple targets at the same time, then it seems like Fury are not doing as great. This is the exact reason why I never level as Fury. I don't really care about killing a single creature a second faster compared to arms, when arms can also deal with many targets at the same time and usually kill these twice as quickly compared to Fury. So are you saying arms are just a go-to specialization in Mists of Pandaria? In a way yes, but then again, if you plan to be tanking at max level, then leveling as protection is not a bad decision, as you will get used to your rotations and skills. And remember, we will have instant queues for dungeons, or well, pretty much. So if you would like to do a couple of dungeons as you're leveling, it's going to be a possibility, and you can learn the new mechanics and fights, and even practice how you'll be running when you're also going to do these at max level, as you will be doing them on heroic mode. When we compare arms and protection are not doing as great single target wise, but they're not doing bad when it comes to pulling many targets. The benefit of leveling as protection compared to arms when you're pulling many targets is that you never really have to care much about dropping low on health, as it usually never happens. Therefore, you are also not really depending that much on your cooldown, and I never really use them, because there is no need. This is why I can also continue to do big pulls, where arms will have to wait for important cooldowns before it will be possible to do such a huge pull. So what is my conclusion? Level as whatever you like, it doesn't really matter, or well, it do in a way if you wish to speed level, but if you're just looking for a fun class to play and have a good time as you're leveling up, then play whatever you would like. However, if you would like to be efficient and play as DPS at max level, level as arms, and if you plan to level efficiently and also tank at max level, I would recommend you to level as protection. The last benefit of protection is that if you don't have all those heirloom items to make arms good at low level, then protection might actually be a better choice no matter what, and level as this all the way up to 85. And when you reach level 85, you would then like to continue leveling as the specialization you plan to play at max level. So I hope you enjoyed this leveling guide. If you would like to see more Mists of Pandaria videos and guides, make sure to check out my channel or subscribe to get notified the next time I post a new video. As always, thank you so much for watching, happy leveling, and have an amazing day. Peace.